History repeats itself. Overwatch was something really special. It was a product of quality, and its experience was so fun in the early years. But the game declined over time and effectively died. Sure, it had a dedicated player base who weren't going to abandon the game no matter what, but there was a clear lack of attention put on the game, a lack of new content, and it simply wasn't relevant anymore. New people weren't showing all too much interest in playing it. And while the game Overwatch may have had a very slow, sad death due to the incompetency of the company, there was at least hope for Overwatch 2. But history repeats itself. And instead of seeing history repeats itself as maybe a solemn statement about the inevitability of human behavior, Blizzard actually saw this as a guideline, a quote to live by. They were not supposed to do better. No, they failed once, and they can fail again. The way Overwatch 1 faded out was more sad than anything, but it didn't really feel deliberate. It was mainly inattentiveness that seemed to kill it. Terrible hero balancing and metas can take part of the blame, particularly GOATs and any of those double shield metas. But Blizzard's lackadaisical approach to handling the game and letting it slip into decline is because they said they were working on Overwatch 2. The community pretty much accepted, okay, yes, they're not focusing on Overwatch 1, they've sort of moved past it, they've forgotten about it, but it's for a good reason. It's because they're working on Overwatch 2, the new and improved Overwatch. The single reason this game is supposed to exist is because they said it would have a story mode with PvE.
Now, when I talk to lots of you, there's a common request that you want out of Overwatch, and Overwatch 2 is going to deliver on this, and that's for more story and for PvE, for cooperative experiences. Overwatch 2 will feature a ton of PvE content. We will have a complete story experience featuring story missions.
Overwatch 1 was simply a PvP game with the occasional PvE story mode event, and players have been asking for an actual story mode or campaign for years. So to hear this news generated a lot of hype around the project. Sure, Overwatch 1 may have been on the decline, but everybody was really excited to see Overwatch be reborn again. Now, one of the great things about the original Overwatch is that in 2016 and its early years, they were able to get people really excited about the lore and universe of its game, with breathtaking cinematics and accompanying materials that really pulled you into caring about these characters. The animation quality and the uniqueness of the characters presented were just something else. So when a story mode is promised for Overwatch 2, everyone was excited because it finally felt like we were getting a much needed expansion to the Overwatch universe that we've been wanting. But hey, let's not get distracted by our delusional past hopes and focus on why we're here now. The PvE that was promised for Overwatch 2, the sole reason for Overwatch 2 existing, wasn't happening. The PvE just got scrapped a few days ago.
With everything we've learned about what it takes to operate this game at the level that you deserve, it's clear that we can't deliver on that original vision for PvE that was shown in 2019. What that means is that we won't be delivering that dedicated hero mode with talent trees, that long-term power progression. Those things just aren't in our plans anymore.
This promise that was getting people hyped for this game and let them be okay with saying goodbye to Overwatch 1 isn't even happening. Without that, what is Overwatch 2? Overwatch 2 has been a failure. Overwatch 2 was nothing but a lie, a way to basically update Overwatch 1 into a money factory in a way that people would accept. And the funniest thing about this money factory is that it's not sustainable, and this game has already been on a drastic steep decline in interest and relevancy. It's at stage 4, terminal game death. It does not have much longer, rest in peace. The rapid downfall of Overwatch 2 since its release has been something so chaotically speedy and just so downright awful that it has felt intentional. You would think surely with how many people are involved in the development of this game, the promotion of this game and all, the marketing decisions, it would have been impossible for it to accidentally fail this hard. So today, let's just talk about how Blizzard seriously managed to mess this up because, again, I think this is one of the greatest fumbles in the history of fumbles and needs to be studied for years to come. So let's start at the terrible launch of Overwatch 2. Launch day for Overwatch 2 was the worst launch of a AAA game I've seen by far. Have there been tons of terrible game launch days? Absolutely. I know this whole thing's subjective, but I find the launch of Overwatch 2 so especially bad because Overwatch 1 had to come down and effectively be deleted for this launch. And people were very attached to Overwatch 1 and already hesitant to make the transition into Overwatch 2. And here's why. The monetization model between the two games changed drastically. Overwatch 1 was released when paid games with loot boxes were an effective monetization model. You paid like $60 and you could earn loot boxes for free, and these loot boxes would give you cosmetics in-game. And by simply playing the game, you could unlock everything you wanted over time. But Overwatch 2 was free to play with the Battle Pass system, and the transition to Overwatch 2 meant that you could no longer earn those things that you had been able to earn before for free anymore. So players who bought the first game thinking they would eventually be able to get certain cosmetics that they really wanted for free were no longer able to do so. If they wanted to do so, they'd have to pay an additional cost by taking out their wallet and buying the skin in the store. So this singular thing alone already made people hesitant with the transition to Overwatch 2 because it limited them. In addition to this, there was a game mode in Overwatch 1 called 2 Capture Point, where you'd have to capture 2 points, obviously. And even though these maps kind of sucked to play on, they're actually really lore-intensive maps. If you look at the cinematics early on in Overwatch's history, a lot of them actually took place on these maps. Important to the lore, they're important to the fan base. People hold these dear to their heart. And in Overwatch 2, these just were not going to be playable in the main game modes anymore. So a lot of things were falling away with Overwatch 1, and you wouldn't be able to return to them because Overwatch 1 was being taken offline. This was a game people were very attached to. And since it was no longer accessible to play, Overwatch 2 could not afford to be worse than the first, because it is the only option fans had. It would be absolutely devastating if this game sucked. The launch had to go well, but it was the worst launch day I've seen. People couldn't even get into the game for hours. Most of, if not the entire launch day, tons of people were locked out and unable to get in because of a very extensive player queue and a glitch. The servers were not ready to handle the amount of people trying to play the game. And what happened to a lot of people, me included, was you'd sit through this queue of 20,000 players, and right when you were about to get into the game, it would send you all the way to the back of the queue and you'd have to start over. And it would do this indefinitely. When players were finally able to get into the game, tons of them noticed they had a severe issue with their account. Some longtime players of the game who sunk hundreds of hours, sometimes thousands into it, when they got into Overwatch 2, all their cosmetics and progress were gone. Their hero gallery locked and barren as if they were new to the game. And this caused massive panic because if you spent a few years trying to unlock everything, and then it just got taken away over the course of a day, completely beyond your control, well, I think it's reasonable to be upset. It was broken. Nothing like this had ever happened on Overwatch 1, where suddenly everything could just disappear from your account and then come back. But on launch day, everyone was stressed. Tons of players couldn't get their progress back for days. So at this point, they thought it was just gone forever. Also, basically, right after launch, it was very apparent that the game was incredibly rushed and couldn't even be considered finished, because there were game-breaking bugs that ended up getting heroes removed from the entire playable roster for weeks at a time. Something that didn't happen in Overwatch 1. Never, at least as far as I'm aware. This is a pretty serious issue for a team-based class shooter in which there are clear counters and a meta. Torbjorn went offline and wasn't able to be played in competitive mode. Within the first week of launch, Bastion was taken out of all game modes for over a week. So a week into Overwatch 2 existing, Bastion had been absent for more time than he had actually been in the game, because there was a game-breaking bug with him where he could just use his ultimate ability constantly and nuke everyone off the face of the earth. It's broken, it was busted. Mei ended up being disabled for 2 weeks. And while Mei was out of the game, Blizzard decided to do the ultimate move and sell a new Mei skin in the cosmetic shop, while again, she was literally unplayable. They were selling items for her when she couldn't even be accessed or viewed in-game. Like, she was completely gone from the entire thing. It got so bad that people started making memes questioning if Mei ever existed and tried gaslighting new players into thinking she was just an Overwatch inside joke. Now, as time pressed on past launch, it became more and more clear that this game failed on multiple levels. It at least severely disappointed. It failed casual players and it failed competitive players. And with it failing these two groups, you gotta wonder who's left being satisfied. People generally agreed that the intended audience of this game was Blizzard's wallet. The monetization in this game is deplorable. It was so bad, it genuinely shocked players and disappointed people who already had severely low expectations. I mean, the bar was on the floor, the bar was in hell, yet the community was still collectively crushed when they saw what this game became. Overwatch 2 at launch day was supposed to be a PvP update to Overwatch 1. Basically, it would eventually be its own full separate game when the story mode was to come along, but for now it was basically a massive player versus player update. But with the amount of issues that were taking place, it became very clear that it was not so much a PvP update, but a store update. While everything else was glitching out on launch day, the store was working perfectly fine. It was the best working feature of the game. The cosmetics in this game that were once earnable for free now had an insane price tag attached. But let's not go on too much about the optional cost of a single skin because, I mean, game cosmetics can run way higher than this. This isn't the crazy part. What is crazy is that the rarity tiers of the new cosmetics in the game were labeled in such a way where basically you had skins that in Overwatch 1 would have been deemed boring as hell, going for an insane price in Overwatch 2. See, this is a legendary skin in Overwatch 1, and in Overwatch 1, legendary skins actually started out pretty decent, but much more simple compared to the legendary skins that released later on. It was very apparent that the design skills increased over time during the course of Overwatch 1, but this is a legendary in Overwatch 2. This is a legendary. Unlike the ones in the original Overwatch, the ones that were earnable for free just by playing, this one looks like crap and you have to take out your wallet to get it. With this decision, they've said that they want your money, but it also seems they wanted to not put in as much effort to get it. Now, the Battle Pass, the vital component any free-to-play game apparently needs to have. The first Battle Passes in Overwatch 2 are seriously contenders for the worst Battle Passes of all time. I mean, the current one is absolutely not great either, but the launch one was on a whole nother level. Because what most games do is when you buy a battle pass, you buy it with in-game currency, and as you complete the battle pass, you actually earn currency at different tiers. So when you complete the battle pass entirely, you have enough currency and some extra to buy the next battle pass. So you can have multiple battle passes if you just pay for one and keep playing. Most popularly, it's done in Fortnite. But this is how it works in so many other successful games. It's what you expect at this point. But in Overwatch 2, there was no currency, so you just have to keep buying the new battle pass each time there's a new season. Now, because of the complaint about the lack of currency in the battle pass, in Season 3, Blizzard made a change. And this change is, I don't know, it's very scummy. They added currency to the battle pass, but not the currency people were hoping for. See, you have to use the premium currency, Overwatch coins, to buy the battle pass. That is not the currency you earn in it. The currency you earn in the battle pass can only be used to buy old Overwatch cosmetics. The legacy credits are traditionally white, but when this battle pass launched, they were changed to yellow only on the battle pass screen. And yellow is the color of the premium currency, which meant that tons of people purchased this battle pass by mistake, thinking that they were going to be able to buy the next battle pass from the same purchase. A lot of people said they felt scammed, and that this was a scummy decision, and Blizzard knew exactly what they're doing. For legal reasons, I don't think I can say that they scammed people, because I don't technically know their intentions. It seems deliberate. I don't know if I can say it is, but it seems very purposeful that this mistake happened. So the Battle Pass still costs money to buy it individually each time, which means with this next season's Battle Pass, you will have had to spend $50 to get each one. The Battle Pass in this game is actually not just a cosmetic thing. 3 of the Battle Passes in Overwatch 2 so far have had a hero attached to it. What this means is that people who buy the premium Battle Pass instantly unlock this new hero to play in their games. People on the free Battle Pass do not. They have to grind to level 55 before they can play the hero. Just so we're clear, that takes well over 2 weeks for a lot of people. It's not easy if you're not just a gamer. Now, after Season 1, when people were complaining about how long it took to get the new hero, Blizzard decided to move them to level 45. So now you have to get to level 45 if you want to get the new one for free. You know, they made a slight change, but it still doesn't change the fundamental problem that it takes free-to-play players a lot of time to unlock the hero. It was a slightly better upgrade, but it's still pay to win. And locking a hero behind this paywall is hugely unfair because this is a game where who you play in the game matters. In Season 1, Kiriko was locked behind the Battle Pass and she was incredibly useful. Yet even though she was a great pick, a vital pick at times, players couldn't play her unless they bought her or reached her in the Battle Pass tier. Now with the grind to finally unlock the hero, it's especially slow if you don't want to pay, because when you buy the premium Battle Pass, you get a 20% XP boost. This means free-to-play players are progressing 20% slower than players who pay as well. You have to really slowly suffer before you get your little crumbs of freebie unlocks and a chance to not be drastically behind other players, which is just another mark of how deep in Blizzard's veins greed runs. They took down Overwatch 1 for Overwatch 2 to exist. They made it so you couldn't play that game, which had a genuinely satisfying progression system and a good overall gaming experience, where the only thing that mattered was your skill. And they took it down so they could shuffle people into this pay-to-win, profit-making experience. The monetization in this game is deplorable, and it is the true factor that fails everyone. It is the underlying theme of all of this. The greed to the detriment of the player experience, how things were just rushed along and profit was at the forefront. The game design itself has just failed casual and competitive players. Let's go into how Blizzard failed these two groups. In Overwatch 1, there were many rewards for playing the game. So first, there was your overall player level, which as it increased, made your player border look flashier. You basically always had this trophy on you, and when you got really far into it, it started looking pretty neat. This progress never reset, it stayed with you during the entirety of Overwatch 1. With each level you increased, you got a free loot box to open up as a congratulations. You could grind out playing the game to keep getting loot boxes each level, and keep progressing your hero gallery. And once you had everything pretty much, you could always end up receiving credits in loot boxes whenever you got a duplicate, and these credits could be saved to buy new cosmetics that got added to the game with each event update. There were just all these things you could get by just playing the game, and all these cosmetics really appealed to the casual player. And with each game you completed in any game mode, there was a nice shiny play of the game with end lobby afterwards that provided various player stats on cards where you could then give a vote to whoever you'd like to congratulate. It was a nice way to encourage sportsmanship, and it actually fostered a lot of positive interactions. I mean, in the completely toxic landscape of Overwatch, I found that this feature was actually pretty nice. You could actually congratulate the enemy team for their performance if you wanted. It was just really nice, and you had a lot of time to talk after the game with the people you were just playing with. You could form groups or meet some friends there. And all the things I just mentioned, casual players could benefit from. The fun thing is that competitive was there as an additional thing if they felt brave enough to try it. It wasn't the sole thing they had to do to feel like they were progressing in some way. In Overwatch 2, not so much. Overwatch 2 has given you the option of Battle Pass or competitive. Outside of competitive and the Battle Pass, there is no progression, nothing to accomplish. You can't collect hero gallery items for free anymore through loot boxes, that's tied to your wallet, and the Battle Pass is also tied to your wallet. Because I mean, the free one just sucks. So the Battle Pass alone is not a satisfying reward system for the casual player, even if they pay for it, because a lot of these unlocks are tied to a specific hero or they're things you won't use. With the Battle Pass not being enough of an incentive for the casual player, where are they supposed to turn to actually see progress in this game? To actually feel like they're accomplishing something or being rewarded for their time? Competitive. That's the only other option. So the game is not for casual players, which means since it's geared towards competitive players, it better deliver on that and not fail them too. But Overwatch 2's competitive is a dumpster fire. Genuinely, your time would be better spent walking across broken glass in wet socks than playing Overwatch 2 competitive. So let's talk about why the competitive in this game has been so bad since launch. Okay, so number one, right out of the gate, the competitive icons in this game are severe downgrades from the previous one. I know it's dumb to talk about the little silly pictures that go with your rank, but I think it just says a lot about the quality of this game. The rank icons in Overwatch 1 looked like this, and for some reason Blizzard thought this was broken and decided to change it to this in Overwatch 2. It's awful. I don't know, this is a very sad moment. Now, the way you actually move up through the ranks in Overwatch 2 is very frustrating. The competitive system itself is flawed. Upon winning 7 games or losing 20, you'll see your rank update. AKA, you have to play anywhere from 7 to 26 games to see your rank update. Now, for Season 3, they did change the amount of wins required and the amount of losses required. They updated it from 7 and 20 to 5 and 15. So that means in the worst case scenario, instead of playing 26 games before you see your rank update, you'll now only have to play 19. But still, notice how I say you'll only have to play 19? Like, that's still awful. That is still horrible. A very lucky player still has to play 5 before they see their rank update. If you are relatively in the rank you belong, which means you have a 50% win rate, that means you're gonna have to play 10 games before your rank updates. In the first game, you could see your results update after each game. So about every 10 to 24 minutes, you would see where you were. Now it's a mystery how you're doing until at least a couple hours in. Or again, a very long time if you're horribly unlucky. Competitive being one of the only progression systems in this game, it's crazy that you don't even get rewarded or see any progress with it that often. Now, you could speculate the reason they made this awful change is because they expect it would incentivize players to play longer, but actually with me and many others, it's done the opposite. I see that long string of wins that needs to happen and I withdraw. No way you're gonna make me sit through all of that for a crumb of satisfaction. The matchmaking in games themselves during Season 1 were hell, and I hear that they are downright dreadful to this day. But the matchmaking at launch, the entirety of Season 1, was a special kind of terrible. I think this alone made tons of people leave. There was a bug that made a lot of players who did their competitive placements place at the lowest tier possible, bronze, with most of these people placing at the very bottom, bronze 5. See, you had people all the way up in diamond, down in bronze. And all of the games in Overwatch 2 competitive for the first bit were just an execution site because every single game was a roll of the dice to see who had the new players, or the bronze players, versus who had been subjected to the glitch and basically been involuntarily smurfing in their games. Each game was stomp or be stomped. It's supposed to be competitive, but in each game, it felt like your individual skill didn't matter too much. Now here's something else. You can't actually see what ranks your teammates are, which I think is insane. In Overwatch 1, you'd be able to see the rank your teammates were, so you could see that the matchmaking was actually fair, putting people of the same rank all in one game. But that is just not visible in Overwatch 2, which is really shady because the matchmaking is also very fast. And when you combine the fact that the matchmaking is super fast, unbalanced and out of control, and you can't see people's ranks, everyone pretty much speculates that they are pairing multiple different ranks into one game, which isn't fair and makes you question what the point of a rank even is. Now, given how much of a slog competitive was, this next feature of the competitive system was a final slap in the face for so many people, and I remember a sea of players making their "I'm leaving the game" posts right after this. At the end of the competitive season, your rank decayed, and this was a very cold decision. It screwed over a lot of players and set it up so that way when you started the next season, it would send you down way below where you belong, just that way you'd have to go climb back up to what you deserve again, which completely just said your grind last season was worth nothing. Players had felt that their time was immensely disrespected. They did end up fixing rank decay very recently, but it still feels too little too late. Let's go over some minor hiccups that this game had that all add up to make the user experience just a bit worse. Now again, the game felt completely unfinished at launch, and a minor but significant example of this is that some of the visual assets in the game looked unfinished. Like for some reason, when you were loading into Ilios, on the map screen, you just see these ominous bear figures standing there, like they're placeholder models, and this screen is not one you're meant to see. This has since been patched a long time ago, but point is, unfinished assets were in this game on launch. And one thing I encountered frequently throughout the entirety of Season 1 was glitched lobbies. I only noticed this in Mystery Heroes. I don't know if it was in another game mode, but what would happen is I'd be sent to a glitched game lobby with other players, and it was always a payload map that had an undetermined amount of time left. The objectives weren't active, and one team was able to roam the map, but the other team was in jail. They were stuck at spawn. And I'm so mad now because while making this video, I realized I deleted my recordings of these because they were like 10 minutes long. But evidence of these lobbies still exist elsewhere online. You can search on YouTube or on Reddit, glitched lobbies, and you'll notice people saying the same thing. Just completely broken games you'd load into, and when you tried to leave the game and re-queue, oftentimes it would just send you back to that exact same one. So one time I spent 10 minutes trying to queue for a proper game, and instead I couldn't play because it just kept sending me back to spawn jail. And here's the thing, in this video, I'm not talking too much about the current state of Overwatch 2, right? I've been going on and on about launch and how this game started with Season 1, but the reason for that is because while they have made some smaller changes to the quality of life, and it's not as bug-ridden as it was at launch day, the fact is Overwatch 2 had a very steep fall-off in relevancy and interest that coincided with the horrible start to this game. The way that Blizzard killed Overwatch 2 lies in the start of it. See, their mistakes in the beginning of this game pushed away so many people that are never gonna come back. It felt like they didn't actually care about the problems the player base was having, and by the time they actually started making changes, it was too late. Lots of players had already left by then. They removed the end of season rank decay from competitive, and a few other things. But tons of other problems mentioned in this video, such as the Battle Pass's lack of appeal, the lack of rewarding features such as an end screen after games, the absolutely terrible competitive matchmaking, and awful monetization still very much so exist. And now Blizzard's put the final nail in the coffin. A few days ago they announced that the PvE that players have been expecting for years, the supposed reason why development was scarce on Overwatch 1, isn't happening.
With everything we've learned about what it takes to operate this game at the level that you deserve, it's clear that we can't deliver on that original vision for PvE that was shown in 2019. What that means is that we won't be delivering that dedicated hero mode with talent trees, that long-term power progression. Those things just aren't in our plans anymore.
The PvE, the singular reason Overwatch 2 exists, was a farce. They didn't just overpromise and underdeliver, they overpromised and didn't deliver. So now, what does this mean for the future? This was a colossal promise, one that you'd think they'd inevitably have to follow through on because, well, with how big it was, surely they weren't going to not do it, but they didn't follow through. So now this was basically a giant message saying that they are completely unreliable and untrustworthy as a company. This has shown that anything they say, no matter how big it may seem, no matter how certain and stable it may seem, is not set in stone and can be axed at any moment. Again, this is after Blizzard has already long been established as greedy. But what this now just signals is pure incompetency in addition to the greed. You simply cannot trust promises this company makes anymore because if one this big can fall through, what's to say they will deliver on anything else they promise? You have no reason to trust them. They've failed communication with the community. See, one of the things a successful company can do is at least imitate a soul. I'm not so daft to think that Blizzard has one. Obviously not. I'm not going to pretend to be shocked that companies put profit above everything. Blizzard has no soul, obviously. But again, a successful business would at least know it should look like it has one. It should at least try to pretend it cares. They aren't just greedy, they're incompetent for letting their greed show through so obviously. Even if they're a soulless shell of a corporation, they can at least communicate with their consumers and pretend they care. But because of Blizzard's lack of transparency, people don't feel seen, heard, and frankly, they feel disrespected. And as a consumer, This makes you think, why should you care about them? Why should you turn to them when you could go elsewhere? So it's safe to say people have lost faith. Now, I think Blizzard has managed to kill Overwatch twice. I know many people want to defend the state of Overwatch 2 and say it's far from dead. And I will say, sure, I'm not saying the servers are literally a dead, cold, barren wasteland and no one ever goes online. That's not what I mean by saying Overwatch 2 is dead. It could be more so described as a sinking ship, the Titanic. It hit the iceberg already. It might as well be dead, since it will inevitably be soon. It's not coming back from this. Maybe it can sink slowly. Maybe it can temporarily stay afloat, but it's not gonna come back up out of that water. It's not gonna unhit the iceberg. The soul of Overwatch is dead. Blizzard annihilated that, and the biggest thing they killed is the potential this game had. They had so much momentum to reach greater heights than the first game did. I mean, they went free to play, and the Twitch viewer numbers at launch were insane. They had so much momentum, but that has completely fallen away. For this video, I looked at multiple indicators of relevancy to see if this game is growing in popularity, or if it's maintaining its popularity, or just making its presence known. See, because Blizzard doesn't actually release information on how many people are playing their games, I can't actually see a graph of their players over time, but I can certainly see if they're growing in popularity or declining based on if people are even hearing about the game or engaging with content surrounding it. I looked at Twitch viewership over time and Google Trends over time. For Google Trends, you can see how many people are searching up Overwatch and terms related to it to see how interested people are. And Overwatch 2 on launch had such a big peak in interest, more people were interested in it than Overwatch 1 at launch. But the decline in interest is so much steeper and sudden than the decline for the first game. It basically plummeted to late stage Overwatch 1 numbers very shortly after launch. The amount of concurrent viewers and players the game has is pretty stable right now, and that's because Overwatch 1 has a pretty committed long-time player base who won't give up easily. But you have to look at this momentum they had and just look at how much they squandered it. The game has not been growing, it has been fading out or maintaining numbers at best. Here's Fortnite's relevancy over time, here's Genshin Impact's relevancy over time, and here's League of Legends' relevancy over time. Overwatch 2's graph is abnormal. A lot of these graphs appear to be on a downward trend, but there's something important to note about these that sets them apart from the Overwatch graph. These are graphs on Google Trends that shows the relevancy of a search term over time, and it rates the term out of 100. 100 was the highest value of relevancy the subject has ever received. Basically, it's at 100%. So if you see something land at the 50 line on this graph, that means that subject is 50% as relevant as it was at its peak. So when we look at these graphs, we see a few things over these different games. I made sure to pick the most popular games from different genres. So let's evaluate each of these graphs individually. In League of Legends, you can see it slowly build over time and reach 100% relevancy in the early 2010s. It then had a relatively slow dip in which it took it a while to start reaching values of less than 25%. Fortnite also had a rather steady decline, and only recently does it occasionally dip below 25%. Genshin Impact had a rather sharp spike, and then it took a very quick dive down to about 52%. And then it's actually shot up and hovered more into the 70s. As for Overwatch, what makes it particularly abnormal is that it had that slow decline like other games we mentioned, and then in Overwatch 2, it spiked up to the highest point it ever has, but then immediately plummeted to the numbers it was pulling before. Like, it was literally at 100, and then it immediately dipped down to like 20%. It could not maintain its hype. It could not bring all that much new interest to it. It could only just maintain the numbers it had before. Let's just say this game might not be in for a good time. So Blizzard did it. They neglected their first game, basically leaving it for dead. A slow, sad decline, really. Also, they could work on their prized moneymaker, Overwatch 2. They built hype up for the game. They got people excited for it, and especially the PvE. And they deleted Overwatch 1, so you were forced to play the second game, and you could not go back if you didn't like it. So, Overwatch 2 had to be a success. There was just simply too much riding on it. only for them to launch it and for it to have the biggest failure of a launch day the world has ever seen, and a sharp, very sharp fall off in interest. And then they ultimately failed to deliver on the promise that started it all. The reason this failed so hard stems from corporate greed, and not even evil genius kind of corporate greed, just genuinely incompetent, out of touch corporate greed. And with this latest thing they did, they're not exactly incentivizing people to come back. They threw away all potential and momentum for Overwatch 2, and they have now effectively killed Overwatch twice. I started playing Overwatch in 2016. I was 14 at the time, still in grade school, well, middle school if you're American, and then I played the game on and off throughout all of high school. And then I entered university, and I started renting and living on my own, still playing Overwatch. I played it even though I changed a lot as a person, I would still always return to it. I loved the game. I sunk hundreds of hours into it. Never made it to master or anything, but I didn't need to, you know? It was just a fun game. I wasn't in it to be competitive. It was just genuinely fun. It holds a special place in my heart, and when they announced they were taking Overwatch 1 offline to make room for Overwatch 2, I was really saddened by it, you know, but I still had a lot of optimism for Overwatch 2. And to say I was let down was an understatement. I mean, hell, I think I've stated that enough. How long have you been listening to me talking? Christ, it's probably been long enough for Blizzard to announce Overwatch 3 and then subsequently cancel its PvE. God, we've been here a while. But I really did have hope for Overwatch 2, and I really did have a lot of fun with some of its gameplay. But it was just the way competitive completely tanked, and the other issues I mentioned in this video, plus the horrible monetization that just gives nothing back to you as a player, that made me leave. But I spent the first season really trying, and when season 2 started and I looked at it, I looked at season 2's battle pass, and I saw that despite how many players voiced their concerns, there were no premium credits in it. And then I flip over to the competitive tab and I see the rank decay. That's when I finally accepted it's over. That this entire month was basically me saying goodbye to Overwatch because the spark it created had left and it wouldn't be returning. And I miss Overwatch 1 still. I would love to have that game back, but I never return to Overwatch 2 because I just accept it will never give me the same satisfaction the first game did. And that sucks. It sucks for me, but it just sucks so much more because I know I'm not alone with this exact experience I described. It's not just a petty little me problem that, you know, a game I loved is not available anymore. It's a game a lot of people loved. There's countless of others with the same experience. It's kind of insulting too, right? That the greed won out and they became a money factory, but it's a crumbling, doomed money factory too. Like, they couldn't even execute that plan properly. This really grinds my gears. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this video. If you like what you see, you can stick around on the channel for a bit, like or subscribe. I mean, you do you. I also have social media, a second channel, and some merch you can check out if you feel interested. Thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day.